Vaccine's safe. We know that based on the clinical trials that have been done so far. There are 4 or 5 different vaccine candidates making their way through the clinical trial process. And those that have reached phase 3 and are about to be evaluated by the FDA for emergency use authorization have been found to be safe in the people who have received them so far. Everyone who got the vaccine had a little bit of reaction like irritation or pain at the injection site. Some people, a couple percent, had chills or low energy or fatigue. And that's the body reacting to the vaccine, your body's immune system making a reaction to help protect you in the future. That's not a symptom of COVID from the vaccine. You cannot get COVID from the vaccine. These vaccines are probably going to be a 2-shot series for 4 of the 5 that are making their way through the process now. And that second shot, a lot of people will have a stronger reaction to, and that's similar to the new shingles vaccine that came out a couple of years ago. It's effective. Again, those same clinical trials showed that it protected 94 or 95% of people from COVID infection and from severe COVID infection. In other words, a few percent in the vaccine group who received the vaccine did become infected with COVID, but it was very rare that any of those patients went on to develop a severe case of COVID. You should still get the COVID vaccine if you've already had a COVID infection. The reason is we don't exactly know what's going to be better, natural immunity from COVID infection or immunity from vaccination. However, we know that in other infections, sometimes the natural immunity you get from the prior infection may not last that long, and that the vaccine for that infection provides longer lasting immunity. And I suspect that'll be the case for this infection as well. We do know that a small percentage of people who have been infected with COVID can be reinfected. So just because you've had COVID infection does not mean that you're automatically immune or that immunity will be long lasting. So the final answer is the recommendation is to have the vaccine even if you've had COVID infection. That's a good question. We don't know the answer to that yet. We'll know that from people who've had the COVID vaccine over time and find out what percentage of them go on to be reinfected months or years later. And hopefully by the spring or summer, we'll know more of that information. It's possible that we'll need to have a booster shot from time to time. Not for the same reason that we would for the flu. For the flu, it's because the strain of influenza that comes through each year is a little bit different or may have mutated a little bit in a way that the vaccine may not be effective. For COVID, it's more likely that the virus isn't going to change much, but that our immunity may drop off over months to years. And so the safest thing will be to repeat a vaccination periodically. The population at large, I think, should consider this. This is really our only medical countermeasure to this pandemic, which is to receive a vaccine. In other words, without vaccinating the population, this doesn't end. The pandemic doesn't end. So we'll need to vaccinate the vast majority of the population in order to, along with masking and social distancing, get back to a point where infection becomes very rare and that we can finally get back to normal life. Good question. I think it would be kind of a phased approach where a lot of people get vaccinated. We suspect that the bulk of people are immune and slowly start working back into normalcy. Probably not this winter. Maybe the vaccine won't be widely available to the public till late spring, early summer, or through that time. And so it probably isn't until next summer. Again, the weather's better then. You can do more things outside. A lot of people are vaccinated. Then we start to see what happens when groups of people stop social distancing and masking. That experiment's run all the time across the US, and we'd be able to find out how effective that is. But my guess is it's not till next summer at a minimum. That does not mean you can stop wearing a mask. We would still ask people to continue social distancing, being careful about being around elderly or frail relatives, and wearing masks. It's a 2-shot series. The first shot probably gives you some protection, but it's that receiving the second shot that really gets you to the 95% effectiveness zone. But it's also possible that if you've had the 2-shot series, you could become infected and just have no symptoms and pass it on. And so we still would ask people to be careful being around others, particularly those who aren't vaccinated or who are sick or have other medical issues or elderly.